Hey guys, and I'm here today to just give you my quick thoughts on the new movie Tom and Jerry. I didn't really think this movie would be amazing by looking at the trailers. I mean, it did show some promise with the great CGI, but other than that, it didn't look very interesting to me. And yeah, this movie isn't very interesting. It's not necessarily terrible, but I didn't really enjoy myself while watching it, and it wasn't very fun. But like I said at the start, the CGI is really impressive. I'm glad they didn't go for a more realistic route with the designs because that would have just looked weird and not like Tom and Jerry at all. And I really like how the characters go with a 2D aesthetic to them even though they're computer animated. It's very fluid and it definitely helps with the slapstick. There isn't as much of it as I would have hoped in this movie, but when it happens, it's pretty entertaining and where the movie is actually fun to watch. Although sometimes the animated characters do stick out more. When they're next to each other in the background, it's fine, but when they're next to a lot of human characters, it is a bit jarring. And speaking of the human characters, that's where the movie gets bad. Their plotline with the hotel is really generic, and the movie spends so much time on it that sometimes you completely forget you're watching a Tom and Jerry movie. I will give them credit, they at least tried to tie in the Tom and Jerry stuff to the human stuff, but it doesn't work out that well. The parts where they do tie into each other only last for brief periods of time, and the movie just becomes boring again after that. The only part where that actually worked was probably the last 10 minutes. Which is not good for a movie that is over 100 minutes. Yeah, that's another thing. This movie is way too long. Most of that human stuff could have been taken out of the movie, and the movie wouldn't change that much, and it would be shorter. Like, seriously, did a movie called Tom and Jerry need to be this long? As for the acting, that too is not very good. The actors give okay performances at best. Sometimes the performances are charming enough to get a few chuckles out of me, but most of the time the performances are less than average and the humor just falls flat. The movie would have benefited more if it had more slapstick because that's where the charm of Tom and Jerry comes from, and it would have been a lot more entertaining to watch. But they're shoved aside for a very generic plot that just goes nowhere most of the time. So overall, I don't really have much to say about Tom and Jerry. I wasn't a big fan of it. I do like its CGI, its slapstick, and a couple of the jokes are decent, but other than that, this wasn't a very enjoyable movie to sit through. The story isn't great, most of the performances are dull, most of the jokes don't land, and it just doesn't really feel like Tom and Jerry. So if you're interested in a Tom and Jerry movie, then I think you'll like this, but if you're more on the fence, I'd say just wait a week for Raya and the Last Dragon. I'm gonna give Tom and Jerry a 4 out of 10. Make sure to comment your opinion on the movie down below, like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.